The conclusion, waterboarding and all other desired techniques, not torture. So how is waterboarding not torture? Well, there might be a bunch of legal precedents that it is, going right back to the Spanish-American War, 1898, but somehow the lawyers didn't find them. Anyway, the reasoning is pretty good. The statute says that to be torture, waterboarding must inflict severe physical or mental pain or suffering. But you see, waterboarding only involves the panic of imminent death from drowning. That's not actual physical pain, you see. Okay, but what about actual physical suffering? The physiological response of drowning seems like physical suffering to me. But no, you see, we are informed that's not how it works. The phrase pain and suffering in the definition of torture must be understood as a single concept. Not pain, not suffering, but pain and suffering. So there's no pain, might be suffering, but there's no pain and suffering. Get it? And so it goes on. The requirement in the War Crimes Act is for specific intent. So says the memo, you have to actually explicitly, specifically intend to inflict severe pain or suffering. If you intend anything else, it can't be torture. You just have to believe in good faith of something other than that you are inflicting severe pain or suffering. Your belief doesn't even have to be reasonable. And, this is a key point, your good faith belief that you didn't actually, specifically intend to inflict severe pain or suffering can be established by reliance on experts, like legal advice, like this very memo. And this is the way to regard these memos. They were regarded as a golden shield. They were written to get torturers out of jail, and producing fallacious legal arguments, reinterpreting the law to justify conduct that was previously clearly torture, has another name, aiding and abetting torture. And there's plenty more. Go and read it. I'm just scratching the surface. Especially read the bit about putting someone in a box with insects. So every time our illustrious professor talks about how everything was assuredly legal, that is the reasoning it's based on. It's ridiculous. It's unbelievably bad. It has been rescinded as an embarrassment, and it is aiding and abetting torture. And our professor can't claim any ignorance about this. We know from the recently released report of the Senate Armed Services Committee that through 2002-2003 she was present at several meetings in the White House at which Mr. Yu, her Berkeley colleague, provided legal advice. So she has heard it. She knows how bad it is, and yet the evidence is that she was decisive regardless. Torture is one thing, and it's terrible. But I'm sorry, my friends, there are much worse things in the world than torture. A full-scale war is much, much worse. War is generally illegal, has been illegal since 1928. It can only be justified legally in two circumstances: as self-defense from imminent attack or with authorization from the UN Security Council under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter. That doesn't necessarily make it moral or good, but it makes it legal. That's international law. Very simple. And neither condition was satisfied in the case of Iraq. So it's illegal. It's aggressive war. And the waging of aggressive war is not just a crime. It's a crime against the world. A crime against humanity. The same crime for which the Nazis were tried at Nuremberg. Countries don't invade other countries in the 21st century. That belongs to a world long past. That belongs in the past ages of barbarism. So the invasion of Iraq is not to be regarded as a mistake or a blunder, but, to quote the Nuremberg Tribunal, is the supreme international crime, differing only from other war crimes, in that it contains within itself the accumulated evil of the whole. That is the position of international law, reaffirmed ever since. Well, what is the role of our illustrious professor? She was one of the 5 administration officials most responsible for providing public information and shaping public opinion on Iraq, and central to policy formulation and execution. Here I'm quoting a congressional committee and leading reports. She was among the top officials promoting, planning, and eventually perpetrating the war. Smoking guns and mushroom clouds. That's our professor. The Center for Public Integrity has calculated that, overall, the Bush administration made 935 public false statements about the national security threat posed by Iraq. Of those 935, our illustrious professor made 56 false statements. Aggressive war and a breathtaking tragedy. Hundreds of thousands have died as a result of the war. By some estimates, well over 1 million. Over 4 million refugees, lives broken across an entire region of the planet, a humanitarian catastrophe, and still ongoing. That's our professor, who's having a signing party in the bookstore.